now, it will be.
Great.
And we'll probably, I think we'll probably finish Beowulf today. And if we do, we'll either have an in-class exam on Tuesday, haven't decided yet, or I will email/post to D2L a take-home exam later on today or tomorrow. That would then be due like next Thursday. Okay? Either way, I'll send you an email to let you know whether it's going to be in class. If it's not in class, then it'll be attached to that email and on the announcements tab. So we left off with Beowulf telling the story of Freywaru and her marriage to ENGL, son of Froda of the Heathobards, and what was going to happen as a result of that marriage. Okay, we talked about, she's going to have a group of retainers with her. One of those retainers is going to be a young guy. He's going to be armed to the teeth and wearing the armor of a dead Heathobard warrior. And some other Heathobard warrior is going to be sitting at that table and is going to say, line 2047, to the son of the dead Heathobard warrior. Can you, my friend, recognize that sword which your father bore in the battle in his final adventure beneath the helmet? That dear iron, when the Danes struck him, ruled the field of slaughter after the rout of heroes. When Withergild fell, those valiant Scyldings. Notice, Withergild, apparently a famous Heathobard warrior. We have no information about Withergild. Okay? Now, here's some son or other of his slayer. Son, nephew, whatever. Of his slayer what? Walks across this floor, struts in his finery, brags of a murder and bears that treasure which ought by right to belong to you. And we're told he urges and reminds him on every occasion. This doesn't happen once. It doesn't happen twice. It happens many times. Indicating that the first time the young warrior hears it, he's not receptive. It takes repeated temptation. Okay? Until the time comes, 2058, that Freywaru's Thane, for his father's deeds, sleeps. Nice euphemism there. Sleeps how? Bloodstained from the bite of a sword. Forfeits his life. From there the other escapes, for he knows the land well. Then on both sides, the sworn oaths of earls will be broken. Well, what were we told earlier about the sworn oaths of earls between Hrothulf and Hrothgar? They were as yet still good. The poet's implying something about the sworn oaths of earls. When it gets down to blood, there's problems. So he says, I don't think this alliance is going to last long. He says, now let me go on and tell you about Grendel, 2069, so that you might certainly know, giver of treasure, how it turned out, the heroic wrestling match. Okay? And he talks about Grendel came after the sun went down. In line 2076, the attack came first against Honshu there. Honshu, we finally learned the name of the retainer killed in section 11. Okay? Deadly to that doomed man, he fell first, regarded champion, Grendel, blah, blah, blah. Reach for Beowulf. Beowulf says, inside there, 2089, though I was innocent, that proud evildoer, sounds like George Bush, that proud evildoer wanted to put me one of many, that is, in his glove, but not to be. Once I angrily stood upright. Right? So, it is too long to tell how I handed back payment to the people's enemy for all his evils. There, my prince, I did honor to your people with my actions. He escaped away, but I couldn't stop him. Okay? Go on to... we can skip that. Other than we hear 2105, there was song and joy, the ancient children widely learned, told of far off times. We're not sure if by the ancient children, if he's referring to Hrothgar. Okay? We're never told before this that Hrothgar's shope is old. So this Beowulf might be telling us, you know, Hrothgar even took the harp and told us of long ago times. But then we're told, 2110, that great-hearted king, gray-bearded old warrior, wrapped in his years, at times began to speak of his youth again, his battle strength. His heart surged within him when old in winters he remembered so much. What might Beowulf be referring to there? Hrothgar's homily? Talking about his youth? So he says, we took our ease, but Grendel's mother came. So it can't be talking about Hrothgar's youth because he doesn't do that till after Beowulf kills Grendel's mother. Okay? So he goes on and says, I fought Grendel's mother, 2138. I severed the head of Grendel's mother with a mighty sword in that battle hall. I barely managed to get away with my life. I wasn't doomed yet. And the protector of earls once again gave me many treasures, that kinsman of Halfdane. So he followed good customs. In no wise have I lost those rewards, the price for my strength, but the son of Halfdane offered me treasures, blah, blah, blah. And he says, and I bring those to you. Why? 2150. I have few close kinsmen, my Helac, except for you. Now, some readers take that to mean I have no close kinsmen. But we're going to find out he does have one. Beowulf. Okay. Beowulf, who is the son of Westan, is a Waymunding. Beowulf is also a Waymunding. He's going to tell us with his dying breaths. Okay. So he ordered the boar standard to be brought in, the helmet towering battle. What in the world are you talking about? A flag with a picture of a boar on it? No. He's talking about a helmet, and the helmet has on its helmet's going to look somewhat like this. Might have eye straps like this, and it might have some kind of nose guard, but it would have a metal band this way and a metal band this way that also goes along the back. And up here on this metal band, if you turn it so you're looking at it sideways, so the helmet is now like this, it's got probably some kind of cheek and neck guard. You know, the nose guard comes down like that. Probably right up here, you have 1, 2, 3, 4. An image of a fat boar with, or a figure of a fat boar with tusks on it. One of, I think at least one, no, 2 or 3 of these helmets have actually been discovered from the Viking period, or late Anglo-Saxon period, right? Why in the world would you put a boar on top of a helmet? Is that like, you know, having the single star in the circle, like, you know, I'm Captain America, I'm Captain Boarman or something? No, it's a talisman. It is a good luck charm. Okay? It'd be like a, you know, a Christian soldier going off to fight in the Crusades, which not many of them actually were fighting pagans and Saracens, they were fighting other Christians, but having the red cross on the shield. Right? So he gets one of those and a whole bunch of other stuff, which we're going to skip. And we get the description of the horses and all that kind of stuff, and the necklace that Wealhtheow gave him. And then we're told, 2177. So the son of Ecgtheow showed himself brave, renowned for battles and noble deeds, pursued honor. I should have wore the t-shirt that has this. By no means slew drunken his hearth companions. You know, why does the poet mention that? Because we're told Heremod did slay his hearth companions. Okay? had by no means slain his hearth companions. He had no savage heart, but the great gift which God had given him, the greatest might of all mankind, he held brave in battle. Just want to get it somewhere close, because I'm going to have to refer to this. So, the poet then tells us, 2183, he had been long despised, as the sons of the Geats considered him no good, nor did the lord of the waiters wish to bestow many good things upon him on the meat benches, for they assumed that he was slothful, a cowardly nobleman. Reversal came to the glorious man for all his griefs. Your gloss. The reasons for the ascribing to the hero an unpromising youth, elsewhere not mentioned, are not clear. Okay? But it's pretty clear that the poet does ascribe to him an unpromising youth. So when Beowulf was just a youth, which bear in mind, when he arrives at Hrothgar's home, what does he say? I did a whole bunch of stuff as a youth. Okay? He was what? Despised. They thought he was a slacker. They thought he would never amount to anything. Okay? Now, maybe, if we want to read into it, maybe that's one of the reasons he does the swimming match against Brecca. I'll throw my life away, it's worthless. Probably not. I don't think so, at least. Okay? But the poet then says, reversal came. There's an emphasis throughout the poem on this idea of reversal. And there's kind of a flip side to that. If you don't ever expect any kind of reversal of fortune, where do you end up? According to those lines, 175 to 188. In the fire's embrace. If you expect change to be possible, if you accept things can turn out differently, you might seek the embrace of God after death. Okay? Here the poet says, nobody thought he was any good. And yet, if they were right, how would the Geats end up? Slaughtered. Okay. Hate to give away the ending. How did the Geats end up? Slaughtered. They end up slaughtered anyways. Okay? So, he has the neck ring brought in. He has the heirloom of Hrethel, the sword, brought in. He gives all this stuff to Hygelac. And we're told, line 2200. Then it came to pass, amid the crash of battle in later days, after Hygelac lay dead, and for Hardred the swords of battle held deadly slaughter under the shield wall, when the battle shilvings sought him out. Who are the battle shilvings? Swedes. Swedes equal shilvings. Danes equal shildings. Okay? So yeah, battle shilvings and spear shilvings. It's the f versus d that are all important there. Okay? That they what? They sought him out, those hardy soldiers, and savagely struck down the nephew of Hereric in his victorious nation. Then came the broad kingdom into Beowulf's hands. Notice, 8 lines. Beowulf goes from being young, hale, hardy, having just returned home with the spoils of war. 9 lines. He held it well for 50 winters. And he is king, and he's been king for 50 winters. Do we know how much time passes between Beowulf's killing Grendel's mother before he becomes king? We have no idea. Absolutely no idea. We don't know if he comes back and, 2 weeks later, Hygelac says, you know what? I think I want to go open up a feud against the Frisians. That is such a good idea, because look how well it turned out for, what was his name? Hnaf. Because what happened to him when he went over to the Frisians? Got slaughtered. Okay? Or it might have been a couple years. It might have been 20 years. No idea. But even then, Helak dies. And after Helak dies, his son becomes king. Okay? But we're told his son becomes king when he's young. Because Helak dies, we're going to be told this. Helak dies, and what does he do? She offers Beowulf the throne. She offers Beowulf the kingship. Now, some commentators, critics, read that as she's also saying, hey, Beowulf, you become king, and guess what? You get me too. Two for the price of one kind of a thing. And Beowulf says no. No, not because he's homosexual. Some people I once had a student, Beowulf, the Great Dane. Student wrote a paper. Oh my God. It was a horrible paper. I tried to advise him, no, you don't want to go there. Anyways, what does Beowulf do? He stands behind the throne and flexes. He's going to be regent, Lord Protector. In other words, people will come and seek audiences with Hardred. Hardred gets to sit on the big chair, his legs dangling, can't reach the floor. But there's Beowulf standing behind, flexing. So that they realize, okay, got the big guy behind him. Okay? So 50 years, boom, blink of an eye. He held it well for 50 winters. He was then a wise king, old guardian of his homeland, until in the dark nights a dragon began his reign, who guarded his hoard in the high heaths and the steep stone barrows. The path below lay unknown to men. Some sort of man went inside there. Bilbo Baggins found his way to the heathen hoard, his hand inlaid with jewels. He got no profit there. Now, and I should have remembered to do this, but I didn't. This page in the manuscript has a lot of problems. There are pieces of words missing. Now, when I say pieces of words, I mean literal portions of letters are gone. Why? One scholar, Kevin Kiernan, whom I've mentioned before, used to be at University of Kentucky, argues that this page in the manuscript is what is called a palimpsest. Well, what's a palimpsest? Every one of you have done this at one point or another in your lives. You write something down and you realize, oh, that's wrong. And you erase it all. And then you write over that. That's what a palimpsest is. It's when you take the page of a vellum manuscript and you scrape the ink off. Why? Because you can't erase it. When you write with ink on vellum, vellum is skin. It sinks into the layer of skin a little bit. And the only way you can get that off is you have to take a knife and very gently chip the letters off. Okay? Kiernan argues the second scribe did that to this leaf in the manuscript and then wrote something else on it. And with modern photography, spectroanalysis, all this kind of stuff, we can read some of what was originally there. Okay? And this isn't the only palimpsest. There's a ton of these that survive. I mean, one of the Greek mathematician, give me a lever long enough and I can move the earth, Archimedes. Archimedes' work survive, and I think it's a 9th or 10th century manuscript. Okay? The manuscript is written like this, and Archimedes' stuff, which had been erased, is written like this. Somebody couldn't read Archimedes' Greek. This isn't Archimedes' original. Okay? It was probably written down sometime in the 9th or 10th century. Somebody got a hold of the manuscript. They needed manuscript or vellum, scraped it all off, turned it this way, and reused it. Okay? So the same thing kind of has happened on this page. It's on this page that we get, and lo and behold, 50 years later, In other words, it's on this page that, Kiernan argues, the second scribe links together two earlier tales of Beowulf, Grendel, Grendel's mother, with a third tale of Beowulf's death, the fight against the dragon. Okay? So you're going to see, dot, dot, dot. It's because there's stuff missing. Okay? So what happens here? Somebody breaks into the dragon's hoard and steals a cup. That's why I said Bilbo Baggins. So Tolkien gets, the idea for Bilbo stealing a two-handled cup from Smaug the dragon. Who is this guy? He's a slave. He's done something wrong. He thinks if I steal the cup and take it to my lord, that will get me free, essentially. Okay? So, what happens? He looks in the hoard, and we're told there were many such antique riches in that earth hall, for in ancient days an unknown man had thought to hide them carefully there. In other words, our poet, putting himself in the cave and goes, oh look, shiny. I've got to describe the shiny. Because the poet is someone who frequently does what? Oh look, shiny. He goes off and follows another trail, right? Finnsburg fragment. 3 references to Helix Frisian raid. Multiple references to Hermod. Why does he refer to all these? What do all of these have to do with Beowulf, the monster killer?
They provide context.
Okay, they provide context, kind of. Do they tell us anything more about Beowulf? No. No, they don't. Now, Tolkien in The Hobbit does something very similar to what the poet is doing here. And he does it in one instance. And it just hit me last week when I was teaching The Hobbit, one of my other classes. In the scene in The Hobbit where Gandalf and the dwarves and Bilbo show up at Beorn's house, okay? It's just Gandalf and Bilbo at first. And then he mentions the dwarves, and Beorn's like, I don't see any dwarves. He goes, well, I didn't want to bother you. So there's a couple out there. Well, go ahead and call them in. Gandalf whistles, and in come 2 dwarves. And he keeps talking, and he mentions the dwarves, and he goes, well, I mean, several dwarves. Well, 2 isn't several. And in come 2 more. And he keeps doing this. And he mentions, the 15 of us. He goes, wait, there's only 12 of you. And finally, I mean, it's like a period of time passes. And finally, 3 more comes in. He goes, all right, now I can see we're all together. Finish your story. Because he wants to find out how they escaped the goblins and the wargs and stuff. And Bilbo tells us, the narrator tells us, he's pretty smart, that Gandalf. He creates the story and kept stopping it and restarting it. One of the most important editors of Beowulf, a guy named Friedrich Kleber, used to taught at the University of Minnesota after he left Germany in the early 19th century, the early 20th century, said that Beowulf works by fits and starts. You start moving forward, you start going forward, and then what does the poet do? Rabbit trail. And then we come back. And you go forward, another rabbit trail. Okay? He says it lacks a straight progression. And I think what Tolkien says in The Hobbit is why. Because every time we go off, we're kind of wondering, what does it have to do with Beowulf? And then we come back, and we see each one of the digressions and episodes does give us a little context. It gives us a little information. Okay? So, he's going to give us a digression. This is called the Lay of the Last Survivor. This next bit we're going to hear. In earlier times, death had seized them all. Kind of sounds like the Wanderer, right? And he who still survived, alone from that nation's army, lingered there a mournful century, like the Wanderer. The Wanderer is the only one of his tribe that lives. He buried his gold friend, we're told. So now this guy lingers there. What's it mean to linger? You're just holding on. Okay? Well, where does he linger? Where he buries the treasure. Where he buries the treasure. Man, if I had $1 for every portmanteau I make, I'd be a very wealthy man. He expects the same. Expects the same what? Death. He's just waiting for death. That he might enjoy those ancient treasures for just a little while. Awaiting Barrow stood in an open field near the ocean waves. New on the cape, safe with crafty narrow entrances, he bore within the noble wealth. So, his people are all dead, and he finds boy, I never made that connection before either. He finds an unused grave. Who / what else was buried in an unused grave? Christ. Joseph of Arimathea had a newly dug grave that nobody had been put in before. You know, we kind of think, well, duh. Who uses it? Who buys a used plot? Well, in ancient Israel, everybody was born in a previously used grave. Okay? Because there's not that much land. Kind of like in Hamlet, too, which we'll see. Well, no, we won't, because we're not doing that. So, he goes on. Sorry, confusing my classes. Thinking it's for Shakespeare for a moment. He goes in and he puts all this treasure into the barrel. And we're told he is called, line 2245, the guardian of the rings. 2245. The Hringahirda. Yes, that is where Tolkien gets his title. That's the Lord of the Rings. Okay? Could also be translated the Shepherd of the Rings. I had a graduate student write an entire master's thesis on the use of that word Hirda in Beowulf, which she originally produced was about 400 pages long. I had to make her reduce it because she looked at Hirda and its use throughout all the surviving Anglo-Saxon literature. Yeah. Amelia was her student.
It was your paper?
No, it was my paper.
It was her teacher.
Senior year English teacher.
One of the best theses I've ever read. I hope she goes on and does her PhD on it. Anyways, hold now, O earth. So he's addressing the ground. Hold now, O earth, for heroes cannot the wealth of men. Tolkien said in the essay on Beowulf, all of Anglo-Saxon literature is about one major theme: the death of man and all his works. That's it. We all die, and everything we produce fades away. That's it. Well, there's a cheery idea for you. Hold now, O earth, for heroes cannot the wealth of men. Lo, from you long ago those good ones first obtained it. In other words, kind of like beginning of Lent, from dust thou art, and to dust thou shalt return. Death in war and awful deadly harm have swept away all of my people who have passed from life and left the joyful hall. Echoes of the wanderer? Oh yeah. Now have I none to bear the sword or burnish the bright cup, the precious vessel. All that host has fled. Now must the hardened helm of hammered gold be stripped of all its trim. What's the trim? The non-gold stuff attached to it, which is going to what? Rust away. The stewards sleep who should have tended to this battle mass, so too this warrior's coat, which waited once the bite of iron over the crack of boards, molders like its owner. The coat of mail cannot travel widely with the war chief beside the heroes. Harp joy have I none, no happy song. Again, echoes of the wanderer. I really wonder if the Beowulf poet was familiar with that poem. Harp joy have I none, no happy song, nor does the well-schooled hawk soar high throughout the hall, nor the swift horse step in the courtyards. Savage butchery has sent forth many of the race of men. Savage butchery means what? War. War. This is a warrior society. And he's knocking war? So, grieving, he mourned his sorrow, alone after all. Unhappy sped both days and nights. Sped. It doesn't mean they went by really quickly. You know, people used to say Godspeed. It doesn't mean, you know, may God transport you. What does it mean? May God make prosperous your journey. May your, whatever you're doing, be profitable. May you have success in what you are trying to achieve. Okay? Unhappy, you could say, succeeded both days and nights, until the flood of death broke upon his heart, until he finally died. An old beast of the dawn found that shining hoard standing open. An old beast of the dawn? Dragon. So it's like a dragon's just wandering around through the neighborhood. Oh, looky there. There's an open grave with a bunch of treasure on it. And what does he do? Burning seeks the barrows, a fierce and naked dragon who flies by night in a pillar of fire. People on earth fear him greatly. It is his nature to find a hoard in the earth. We're ancient and proud. He guards heathen gold, though it does him no good. Notice, it's in his nature. What are dragons? The dragon here does not have the connotations, for example, of the dragon in the book of Revelation. Notwithstanding what how some critics have allegorically read this. This is not Satan. It is not representative of Satan. It is not symbolic of Satan at all. This is an old northern dragon. If it's representative of or symbolic of anything, it's avarice. That's it. Just pure rotten greed. For what? Hoards. See, as Tolkien writes in The Hobbit, dragons are glorified accountants. A dragon goes and finds a hoard, lays down on it, and guess what? It knows every little teeny tiny piece. So you steal one piece, whether it's a two-handed cup or a little teeny tiny speck of gold, that dragon knows. And for that dragon, the little teeny tiny speck of gold is worth as much as the giant two-handed cup. Why? It's mine. It's mine. You don't take what's mine. Okay?
I need to find a dragon to do my tax return.
Yeah, I kind of wish the government, So, the dragon goes in and does what? For 300 winters, that threat to the people held in the ground his great treasury. How does he hold it in his ground? Like your dog, if you have one, the dragon goes in, sees the big old hoard, walks around it 2 or 3 times, gets comfortable, lies down, and goes to sleep. And sleeps for 300 years. What's the motto of Hogwarts? Never tickle a sleeping dragon. Why not? Because you wake him up. And you're dead. You don't want to wake a sleeping dragon. Okay? So, it lies there for 300 years. Then the hoard was looted by the thief. Notice, looted. He took one piece. One piece. When the dragon stirred, 2287, strife was renewed. He slithered among the stones. Stark-hearted, he found his enemy's footprint. He had stepped too far in his stealthy skill, too close to the serpent's head. Thus can an undoomed man easily survive wreck and ruin. Notice, the thief was an undoomed man. The Old English, un fina, unfated. It wasn't his time to die. Because if he was fina, the dragon would have caught him. Okay? If he holds to the ruler's grace and protection. The horde guardian searched along the ground, greeted to find the man who had sorely harmed him while he slept. He doesn't find him, does he? He comes out. Here, let's use this for the burial mat. So the burial mound, we're going to be told, has archways leading into it. The Old English is going to call these stanboga, stone bows, if you want. Okay? So the dragon comes out, and how do you imagine he goes about looking for this thief?
Sniffing around.
Does he just go out sniffing around? Does he go off over here? Is he like a Roomba? You know, automatic vacuum cleaner. It goes this way, and then it goes this way, and then it goes this way. I don't think so. Dragons are smart. Look at it from the top, and the mound looks like this. And the dragon comes out, and I think he does this. He makes ever larger circles. What is happening as he makes ever larger circles? He's torching everything. Just napalm everywhere, you know. Why? Probably got him. That, you know, you kill everything in sight, and you more than likely killed the thing that stole from you. So, he comes out, and we're told, 33, line 23, 12 or so, 11 or so. Then that strange visitor began to spew flames and burn the bright courts as burning gleams struck horror in men. That hostile flyer would leave nothing alive. The worm's warfare was widely seen as fresh hostility, Okay? And then what does he do? Apparently he does this one day. And then he goes back in, walks 3 times around his hoard, and goes back to sleep. And stays asleep. In other words, he got his revenge. He burned the countryside. Now leave me alone. To Beowulf, 23:24, the news was quickly brought of that horror that his own home, the best of buildings, had burned in waves of fire, the gift throne of the Geats. The altar, you know, the place where he distributed treasure, his palace, torched. Beowulf obviously was not there at the time. Okay? We don't know why. But we're told, to the good man, that was painful in spirit. 23:29. 8. Greatest of sorrows. The wise one believed he had bitterly offended the ruler of all, the eternal Lord, against the old law. Notice the difference in response or reaction that Beowulf has than that Hrothgar has. When Grendel first comes to Hrothgar, what does he do? Woe is me. That's it. Woe is me, sits down and weeps. Beowulf does what? Sorry, God. He thinks he had bitterly offended the ruler of all, the eternal Lord. Is it actually H? I don't remember. 23:50. Uh, 23:30. Helps if I can read. Yeah, H and Drichton. Same word that's used in, same phrase that's used in Cadman's hymn. Okay? Against the old law. He had violated some old law. His breast within groaned with dark thoughts. And the poet tells us, notice, the poet says, well, that's not his old custom. That's not the Beowulf we know. What is the Beowulf we know? Well, there's a monster. I'm going to go kick its you know what. So what does he do? The war king, the prince of the waiters, 23:35, devised revenge. He doesn't just sit and mourn. No, what does he do? He says, make me a shield. What kind of shield? And the shield we get described a little bit. Now, a lot of critics, a lot of Beowulf scholars say this shows us, possibly, that the Beowulf poet is familiar with classical literature. Because this is echoes, let's say, Achilles having his shield made. Achilles or Aeneas? They both begin with E and end with S. Either Achilles or Aeneas. I think it's Achilles. Okay? So he has a big shield made. What kind of shield? One made out of steel, metal. Why?
Fire.
Yeah, you're going to go up against a fire-breathing dragon, and wood does what? Poof. Of course, metal against a fire-breathing dragon, what can the metal do?
Melt.
It can melt. Okay? So, that long good nobleman, 2341, the long good nobleman, had to endure the end of his lone days, this world's life. Okay, that's line 2341. How many more lines do we have before we get to the poem, to the end of the poem? Almost 700. 3,182. It is over 7. It's over 700. We've got a fourth of the poem to go, almost. Fifth of the poem to go. And the poets just told us what? Beowulf dies, man. Well, what about suspense? Suspense is not an item in Anglo-Saxon literature. Okay? It's not at all. Any poem like this, we're told the ending long before it comes. Okay? So, notice, we're told right there, he's going to die. But so is the worm. So does the dragon. Though he had held for so long his hoarded wealth. So, that prince of rings, notice the dragon was called the guardian of the rings, the Hirda of rings. Beowulf's now called the prince of rings. The rings here, if I remember, however, is Beaga. I'm almost positive that's what it is there. 2345. Nope, this one's ring. There's another time where Beaga is used for ring. It's from this word that we get something that is ring-shaped that we still use today. Bagels. Oddly enough, okay? Not beagles, bagels, okay? So, lost my place here. He scorned to meet out, 2345. He scorned to meet out the far-flung flyer with his full force of men, a large army. I don't like, by the way, how Louisa translates that line. Why? Too much alliteration. I mean, he tries to follow the Anglo-Saxon formula pretty clearly. But 2345, far-flung flyer, full force. Now, not all of those have the same accent, but it's echoic of later medieval alliterative verse where people try to kind of reconstitute the Old English, but they don't know the process. They don't know the rules for it. So that in the vision of Piers Plowman, you have a line, in a fair field full of folk found I there. Fair field full folk found. Okay? But you have just far-flung flyer full force. Same thing here. Okay? So Beowulf's not going to attack with a big army. Why? He doesn't fear the attack. Because he had survived 2315 many battles, barely escaping alive in the crash of war. After he had cleansed. So he had survived a lot of battles after he killed Grendel. 2354. Third and final reference to Higelac's fishing raid. It was not the least of hand-to-hand combats when Higelac was slain in the chaos of battle, the king of the Geats, the lord of his people in the land of the Phaeacians, the son of Hrethel, died sword drunk. Now you can say because he drank too many swords. He's being slashed and diced. Beowulf escaped from there through his own strength, took a long swim, had in his arms the battle armor of 30 men when he climbed to the cliffs. Now, when he climbed to the cliffs can mean when he left the field of battle, having slain the Frisians, and has 30 suits of armor, and he climbs to the cliffs and he does a one-handed swan dive, or when he climbs back up the cliffs in the land of the Geats. So he swims, and we're told by no means did the Hetware, the Finns, or the tribe fighting on the side of the Finns, need to exult in that fight when they marched on foot to him, bore their linen shields. Why? Few came back from that brave shoulder. Well, how many few? Goose egg. He killed them all. Genocide, anybody? The son of Ecgtheow crossed the vast sea, wretched, solitary, returned to his people, where Hid offered him the hoard and kingdom. And you could, if you want to, you can go all Freudian and say, yeah, but what did she mean by the hoard, the treasure? Rings and royal throne. She did not trust that her son could hold the ancestral seat, now that Helak was dead. But Beowulf says no. Okay? He didn't want to become lord over Heardred or choose to rule the kingdom, but he upheld him. He stood behind and flexed. He supported him. Okay? So then what happens? 2379. Wretched exiles, the sons of Othra, that's what this is all about, did what? They sought him out across the seas. They had rebelled against the Scilving's ruler, the best of all the sea kings who dispensed treasure in the Swedish lands, a famous king. Okay? Context. So, Ongenthal, king of the Swedes, has two sons, Othra, Onula. Othra is the oldest son, so when Ongenthal dies, Othra should become king. Okay? Which he does, briefly. Onula then kills him, apparently. So, Othra's two sons, Anmund and Eadgils, flee from their uncle. Where do they go? They go to the Geats, when Heardred is king in name. Beowulf's flexing behind him. What does Heardred do? Heardred gives them refuge. Sanctuary city, He gives them sanctuary. Okay? And they're fine there for a while. But then what happens? Onula then attacks. Okay, now who is Onula? Onula is the one referred to in 2382. The best of all the sea kings of the Swedes. A famous king. Onula then does what? He attacks the Geats. Okay, which means he attacks Heardred. Why? Because Heardred has given refuge to Onula's enemies. What happens there? Onula's chief warrior, we guess, a guy named Westan, kills Onula's chief claimant to the throne, Anmund, Othra's eldest son. All right? Heardred also dies. Now, who's Heardred? Beowulf's king. Fourfold Germanic ethic: duty to Lord, duty to king, duty to avenge one's Lord, duty to Lord, duty to family, duty to avenge one's Lord and family, trust in weird. Heardred is killed. What is Heardred to Beowulf? Kin and king. Okay. Cousin and king. Pause there for a moment. That cost him his life. To him, Heardred. For his hospitality, he took a mortal hurt with the stroke of a sword, or the sword of a stroke. That son of Helak. And the son of Ongenthal afterwards went to seek out his home. Once Heardred lay dead. Onula, after Heardred is bleeding out on the ground, Onula goes back to the land of the Swedes. 2389. Let Thonar Bregostol Beowulf Halden. Let that throne Beowulf to rule. Okay? Or another verb for let, allowed. Beowulf, that throne, to rule or to wield. What does that imply? Who's king? Okay. What's that verb, let, imply?
Be allowed Beowulf to take the throne or keep the throne.
Okay. So what does that mean?
Left him alive.
Well, like,
Left him alive, okay.
Beowulf wasn't really empowered.
that's what you just granted power.
Is there a problem there?
Yeah, because, like, is he really king if they just, like, I don't know.
What would we call that kind of king today?
Like,
What during the Cold War? You guys were all not alive.
what's it called?
What was Poland to the Soviet Union? What was East Germany? What was Bulgaria, Romania?
Proxy state?
Proxy state. They were puppet states. Is Beowulf at that point a puppet
Yeah,
to Onela?
yeah, pretty much.
But he's got the strength of 30 men in each hand. Why doesn't he break Onela's neck?
Because so tall.
Okay. I raised this question on the International Anzacs Listserv back in the 90s because I was pretty sure why he does it. And you would think I, uttered blasphemy against the Holy Trinity or something. I mean, it was like coming out of the, Ethernet, etc. Really, really bad. There were one or two, maybe half dozen people going, that's nobody's really addressed this issue before, and people still don't. They don't want to address it. Why? Because it calls into question Beowulf's chief characteristic. He's a hero. If he's a hero, fourfold Germanic ethic says, what do you do for someone who slays your king? I mean, this comes right after, what have we been told? What did he do when Helak was killed? He killed everybody who was involved in Helak's death. He didn't only, we're going to get the name of the guy who actually killed Helak. Beowulf kills him. You know how? Squeezes him to death. He doesn't use a sword. He does this. And he crushes him. Okay? In other words, he got what he had coming. Onela, he is allowed to leave, and we're told Beowulf is allowed to hold the throne. By saying Beowulf is allowed to hold the throne, the poet is saying Onela is in the position of power there. And Beowulf is not. Okay? And then you hear, and let Beowulf hold the high throne and rule the gates. That was a good king. Who's the that? Is it Beowulf? Or is it Onela? I think it's Onela. Amelia?
Well, so, I mean, I know that, like, Onela is, like, letting Beowulf be king, but I feel like the ball is still in Beowulf's court because, like, Onela he knows that he killed Kin and his lord, so Beowulf could come after him at any point, and he obviously could kill him with no problem. So I feel like Beowulf still has the upper hand.
And that's what most critics say, most scholars say, yeah, but look at the next line. In later days, he did not forget that prince's fall. In later days, he whom? Beowulf. Beowulf didn't forget Hardred's fall. I mean, look at your footnote. Beowulf, whose revenge for the death of his lord Helak takes a curiously indirect form. That's Liuza trying to tippy-toe and walk on eggshells around the problem. Where else does Beowulf ever, the character, take an indirect form of doing something?
Never.
Yeah, never. You got a monster problem? Monster killer. I'll break his neck. I'll rip his arm off. I'll chop her head off. I'll squeeze him to death. I'll kill a tribe of giants. I will capture 5. I will slay all these sea monsters. Beowulf never does anything half measure, right? I mean, it's always full and over the top, except for this one instance. My question is always, why? Why does the poet do this? There's got to be a reason, okay? And I think it's getting at part of the overall theme of the poem. So, that was a good king. I am pretty sure that refers to Onela. And the poet is saying, he's a good king. Why? Because he let Beowulf have the throne. It's not referring to Beowulf. A lot of people disagree with me. Some of the most preeminent Beowulf scholars in the world say, no, that's the right reading. Okay? Well, how do we know Beowulf got his revenge? Because in later days, he befriended ENGL, the other son of Onela, the brother of dead Eanmund. Okay. And he helped ENGL what? Get his revenge on Onela. Now, some people say, who has the greater claim to kill Onela? ENGL or Beowulf? Onela is responsible for the death of Beowulf's cousin and king. Onela is responsible for the death of ENGL brother and king, father and king. ENGL has got a great claim. But guess what? That might apply at The Hague. I mean, that kind of logic. At an international court of law. But when you're dealing in an honor culture and an honor society, you do something to me or one of mine, guess what? I'm coming after you. You know, if somebody else has a claim on that, you know, you can get your claim if you get there before I do. Otherwise, I'm going to kill the bastard. Okay? So, ENGL does get his justice. And so the son of ENGL had survived every struggle. Okay? So, we end up, these are the Swedes, remember? After all this happens, who's the king of the Swedes? ENGL. All right? This is important for the end of the poem. Because Onela didn't personally kill Eanmund. Somebody else did that. This guy did that. Weston. Okay? So the son of ENGL had survived every struggle, every terrible onslaught with brave deeds, until that one day, he had to fight the dragon. I'm an old man now. And he takes 12 men. A dozen. To seek out the dragon. Okay? And one more. It's why Michael Crichton writes the little novel, The 13th Warrior. 12 plus 1. Okay? Because the 13th man is the one who knows what? Where the dragon is. Where the barrow is. Okay? So he shows them how to get there. Till they get to the earth hall, the cavern near the crashing waves. Notice, Beowulf's battles seem to all occur near crashing waves. Okay? Grendel at Heorot is near the water. Grendel's mother is under the water. And the dragon, he has to walk over water, step over or go through water. Anyways, they make their way there, and we're told 24:17, the battle-hardened king sat down on the cave. I think it's because he's tired. They march here, and he's like, and he does what? He wishes good health to his hearth companions. His heart was grieving, restless, ripe for death. The poet's taking us in Beowulf's mind. What's he thinking? This is a good day to die. And this is a worthy opponent. How better to go out than against a dragon? What did Hrothgar warn him of? Sickness, sword, or old age. When you can't see anymore. Would that be a fitting end to Beowulf? No, it wouldn't. Okay? So he sits down, his doom was near, and as we've heard before, he gives a speech. speech. Why? Because Beowulf likes to give a speech. And he says, in my youth I survived many storms of battle, times of strife. I still remember them all. And part of me thinks his men are going, oh God, no, please. Not again. Are we going to hear about Grendel again? I was 7 years old when the Prince of Treasures, friend to his people, took me from my father. The Prince of Treasures, friend to his people, Hrethel. In other words, Beowulf was fostered at the court of Hrethel. Okay? He says, I remember all that. He held me, kept me, gave me all kinds of stuff. Herebold and Halfkin and my own Helac, they were alive then. But the eldest, Herebold, what happened? Got accidentally killed by his younger brother. Why is he thinking about this? Sports psychologists tell you, if you're getting ready to go for the big bout, the big game, what do? You visualize. What do you visualize? Victory. Yourself succeeding, lopping off the head of the dragon. And what's he thinking about? How screwed up this system is. The fourfold Germanic ethic. It doesn't work. How do you know? Well, he accidentally kills him. Red mark. So, he accidentally kills him. According to that fourfold Germanic ethic, what now needs to happen? Either Hrethel or Helac have to kill Halfkin, or Halfkin has to do what? He's got to pay Weregild. Okay, so let's say opposite paying Weregild. Where does he get the money? Where does he get the guild? Dad, can I borrow 20? To pay you back for Herebold's death? Poof. The whole, you want to go all Derrida and deconstruct? At that point, poof, it all breaks down. Where can Hrethel, it's like some of the parents of the kids in Parkland. Where can I go to get my son or daughter back? Hrethel can't do anything. And that's why Beowulf tells this story. It's as if, it was said, as if an old man should live to see his young son ride on the gallows. What does Hrethel die of? Beowulf tells us. A broken heart. He can't kill his son. He can be angry at his son, but he can't hate his son because he's his son. But there's nothing he can do within that Germanic ethical system to get what? Modern terminology, psychology, closure. Catch-22 was written for Hrethel. The phrase, between a rock and a hard place, that was written for Hrethel. He is Sisyphus, pushing that damn rock up the hill and it just keeps coming down. No matter what he does. Nothing. Okay? So, Beowulf says, 2464, he could not in any way make amends for the feud with his murderer. And notice, Beowulf puts a word at the center of it. Feud. There is a problem with the feud culture. Because the feud culture is what? It's, if you ever saw The Untouchables with Sean Connery and a very young Kevin Costner. Here's the scene where the old grizzled G-man, Sean Connery, says to the young Elliot Ness, you got to bring the right weapon to the fight. They bring a knife, you bring a gun. They hurt one of yours, you kill one of theirs. They kill one of yours, you kill a bunch of theirs. And what happens? Everybody ends up blind. Or, what do you have to do? Annihilation. One side must win. How? How did the United States win, and the Allies, win in the Second World War? And why didn't the United States win the Korean War or the Vietnam War? What had to happen? Well, on the USS Missouri, I think it was Missouri, what did, I shall return, pipe, MacArthur, make the Japanese agree to? Unconditional surrender. And Japan still has a pacifist constitution. Why? We wrote it for them. Unconditional surrender. Germans, the same thing. Now, did we annihilate them? Nope.
No.
Could we have? Yes. But what would it have taken? Okay, one, the death of all the Japanese. That's what annihilation means. But what else? What was one of the whatever you think about it, what was one of the rationales for dropping the 2 atomic bombs?
To end the war quicker and cause less American lives.
Less loss of life on both sides. I had an uncle who was on the initial invasion wave of Okinawa, okay, which was like walking across bodies, okay. It was to stop loss of life, both Japanese and Allied forces, okay? Because the only other way, why are the Jews and the quote-unquote Palestinians, don't call them Palestinians, call them Arabs. Where are the Jews and Arabs still at each other's throats? How far back does that go? Almost. Abraham, Isaac, and Ishmael. Thousands of years. Is it going to take annihilation? Well, one side kind of thinks so. Beowulf's, the poet is kind of saying, folks, this whole idea of we have to completely kill our enemies does not work. So he goes on. Then with the sorrow which oppressed him too sorely, he gave up man's joys, 2469. Chose God's light. Now, your gloss. He died. Well, yeah. But notice Beowulf makes it sound like he chose what? Light rather than darkness. Because what have we already been told, Lay of the Last Survivor? What happens to everybody? We all die. How did all of the last survivors people die? Did they just gradually waste away and thin out? No, they were all killed in war. What was the cause of the war? Feud. This finite is related to the word feud. That's what caused it. Then he says, then there was strife between the Swedes and Geats, a quarrel in common across the wide water after Hrevel died. So the Swedes, Onyenthal, and these guys get in a tussle. Why? Halfkin comes up with the great idea, like his little brother Helek is going to later on against the Frisians. He's going to attack the Swedes. What's he going to do? He captures Onyenthal's wife. And we are told, where is it? Can't remember the exact line. He deprives her of her treasure. I don't think you have to go all Freudian to understand what that means. He rapes her. Makes Onyenthal and Onola and Othra a little bit upset. Okay? So all hell breaks loose. Where'd he go? Halfkin gets killed, and Helek rides into the rescue. I mean, we're actually told there's horns and everything. I mean, it's the cavalry. Okay? Helek comes in, so I'm going to skip a bunch. And that's where Beowulf tells us that he slew Day Raven 2501. Okay? says, I will wage war. He's talking about this as an example of war. He says, I will wage war like I've done ever since I slew Raven, champion of the Hugas. And you got the footnote down there. Frankish Frankish tribe allied to the Frisians. Raven was the guy who killed Helac. So he killed Raven. Right? 25:10. Beowulf spoke. Well, he hasn't stopped speaking. I mean, the previous line ended with quotation marks. They're not there in the manuscript, by the way. Said boasting words, notice, for the very last time. I survived many battles in my youth. I'm going to go seek out a feud and do a glorious deed. Okay? Seek out a feud. Well, yes and no, because the dragon already started one. Well, yes and no, because the guy who stole the cup started one. Beowulf's just kind of finishing the feud. Because how did I say, what's the only way a feud can really finish? You got to kill all the others. Okay? Now, is there another dragon lying in the woods somewhere? Not that we're told. So, he says, I will yet go kill that evildoer if he will come out to me from his earth hall. Notice what that's implying. Where is the dragon? Asleep on the hoard in the barrow. And where will the dragon be tomorrow if Beowulf doesn't bother it? Asleep on the hoard in the barrow. And how long will it stay asleep if nobody bothers it? Another 300 years. That's why. Never wake a sleeping dragon. Because then you have an angry dragon. You have a mixture of, pit bull, Rottweiler, Doberman Pinscher, German Shepherd, amped up on steroids, Mastiff. So he goes and wakes it. And he says, I wouldn't use a sword like I did against Grendel, but, he's got flames. I'm going to use one. 25:24. From the horde's warden I will not flee a single foot, but for us it shall be at the wall as weird decrees. He doesn't say, help me, Jesus, or it'll be as God. He goes back to the weird. Kind of like the Germanic reliance on what will be, will be. Okay? So he says, I'll get that gold. Battle will bear away your Lord. And his men are like, ready to battle that. So he tells them to do what? You guys stay here. I'll go fight the dragon. Okay, now that's kind of a command. Lord-Thane relationship, you do what your Lord tells you to do. And I imagine most of the men are going, better him than me. So, Beowulf does that. Does what? He goes up by the wall. He goes to the barrow. There is a stream of water. I don't understand this, but there is. There's a stream of water coming out of the barrow. And Beowulf goes in, 25:15 following. What does he do? He, enraged, the Old English is Jabolgen, bellowed. He goes and he yells to the dragon. What does he yell? The poet doesn't tell us. You dirty, rotten son of a slimy lizard. But we are told the dragon recognizes the voice of man. And I think by recognizes, the dragon understands. The dragon understands human speech. And the dragon kind of goes, did he just say what I think he said? And the dragon comes out. Now, there was one Old English scholar, died several years ago, who actually thought the dragon was the last survivor. Was the guy who put all the gold in the barrel. And that when he finally laid down, he lay down on the barrel and quote unquote died and was transformed into the dragon. Why? Because we have a very similar tale from Old Norse, where a man goes to sleep on a dragon's hoard and becomes Fafnir the dragon, one of the greatest dragons of Germanic literature. Okay? Nobody else thinks this. Everybody thinks Ray Tripp was tripping on something when he came up with that idea. So, Beowulf challenges the dragon comes out, they fight, they pause, they fight, they pause. And finally, one of Beowulf's men intervenes. Who is that man? Beowulf. What does Beowulf do? He says to the others, while he's watching Beowulf get torched, I mean, he's standing there holding his sword, and the dragon's... He says to the other men, 26:33, I remember the time when we took mead together, when we made promises to our prince in the beer hall. He gave us these rings, this battle gear, these helmets, these hard swords, that if such a need as this should ever befell him. Go back to the very beginning of the poem. Remember, we're told about that Beowulf, and we're told, thus should a warrior do. Distribute your father's treasure. Why? So that when you're old age, your men will stick by you. Well, Beowulf did that. And how many of his men stick by him?
Like 12.
And who is that man? Not only Beowulf, but what else is he?
He's sweet.
Family. Blood relation. Okay? So Beowulf says, he gave us all this treasure, all this armor. We should go help him. And they're like, have fun storming the castle. So what does he do? He runs up to Beowulf, 26:63, and says, put it in modern English and much, much shorter, suck it up, Beowulf. Come on, you're Beowulf. And he's like, oh, yeah, you're right. And what does he do? The worm comes back. Hot waves roll over them. And Beowulf, 26:75, showed courage under his kinsman's shield, the young warrior, when his own was charred to cinders. Still the battle king remembered his glory. Beowulf comes to himself and says, like, I'm Beowulf, for Pete's sake. Whips out his sword, and where does he strike the dragon? What's he going for? How many of you have seen Signs? Mel Gibson, Joaquin Phoenix, or River Phoenix? Okay, Joaquin. Remember this, swing, Meryl, swing. What does Meryl finally swing for? Home run. He's going for a homer. He's going to take the head off. And what happens? Bing! His sword shatters. But what happens in the meantime? The dragon bites him around the neck. Okay? What does Beowulf do? Beowulf looks at that dragon and he says, dragon, big head, massive fangs, hot fiery stuff coming out. I'm not going there. I'm going to go a little lower down. And we're told he stabs the dragon, and what does he do in stabbing the dragon? I know nothing about dragon anatomy, but apparently he puts out its pilot light. That there's something lower down in the dragon that's the source of the flame, and he extinguishes that. So that Beowulf then, now having been bitten on the neck, so dragon poison is starting to course through his veins, he takes his sword, his short sword, is what's called a sax. It's where the Saxons get their name from. Okay? And does what? He apparently cuts the dragon in two. All right? So now, 27:15 or so, the wound starts to burn and swell. Beowulf realizes, I'm dying, and so he sits down. And he looks on that work of giants, this thing, okay? And we get the description of the stone Boga, and he says to Hielak, 27:29, now I should wish to give my war gear to my son, if there had been such, flesh of my flesh, if fate had granted me any heir. Now that's pretty clear, right? What does he seem to be saying? I don't have a son. Notice, I should wish if there had been such, if fate had granted me. I held this people 50 winters. There was no folk king, not any of the neighboring tribes, who dared to face me with hostile forces or threaten attack. Kind of sounds like when Hrothgar had ruled for 50 years and he had peace. The decrees of fate I waited on earth, held what was mine, sought no intrigues. That is, I didn't really make alliances with people. What else? Nor did I swear many false or wrongful oaths. That's litotes. How many false or wrongful oaths did he swear? 0. Okay? For all that I may have joy, though sick with mortal wounds. Why? Because the ruler of men need not reproach me with the murder of kinsmen when my life quits my body. Is he saying, I'm blameless, God? No. But he is saying, I didn't kill any of my people, kinsmen, nor did I break any oaths. So, Beowulf, go, take a look at the hoard, bring some out. Why? So that I might see that great wealth and give up my life and lordship, which I've held so long. Does he want to see the great wealth for himself? Does he say, let me see what I won that can be buried with me? No. What do you think is going to be done with all this treasure? It'll be used for the people. And yet, we get to the end of the poem, and what do we find out is done with all this treasure? It's burned and interred with him. Why? I think it goes back to the lay of the last survivor. Hold now earth, all this treasure. Why? It came out of you, and let it go back to you. Why? As much good as it ever was to men. Poet seems to be saying, accumulation of wealth and gold will get you what? A 6-foot plot of ground. That's it. It's not he who dies with the most toys wins. Okay? Okay, almost. We'll pick up with 38 on Tuesday.